spend way too much time thinking about teaching. But honestly, I've always looked at the tools around me as ways of not only improving teaching, but getting it done quicker. Getting it done quicker too, because we only have, X amount of, years in us, and we know the university wants us to be doing many things, and some stuff gets rewarded at a higher rate than others. So we have to pay. We do have to be very sensitive to what you had to say. Okay. Okay. So what do I need to do to go forward here?
Just click.
Click goes forward.
Left.
Oh, click on this side. It goes forward. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. So Pete, you've met. The other guy though is worth hearing about because he's Peter. Can you hear me, Pete?
Yeah, you're fine.
Are you from Iowa? No.
No.
No. Okay, so this guy's from Iowa. And then this other guy, so I don't know if you can see this stuff, but our Otto Rowetter from Iowa, he was a jeweler in Davenport. And in the 1920s, he literally invented sliced bread, or at least he invented the sliced bread machine. No one knows that, right? They used to, but down in Missouri at his first bakery that he made bread for, they actually they celebrate the sliced bread anniversary. Okay, sliced bread, by the way, was a complete failure first time out of a box. It did not do well at all when it was introduced. It took essentially plastic bags or wax bags that they put the bread in, and marketing where they named it Wonder Bread. For people to start buying. But yeah, and he even has family still here. But the idea of like making stuff with the tools around you has always fascinated me. Now, my teaching stuff is I teach pretty large classes and very large classes. I know from reading the literature that if you can have the students doing writing and thinking and actually creating product, they will learn more than if they just sit there, and then if they're more passive. But I know that there's always been an issue with how much of a constriction the faculty members' time is on things. So I've always tried to work and figure out how can I do stuff faster in the same amount of time. Now, ThinkSpace, I came to it in an earlier incantation. One of the things that complete trivia is that I'm left-handed and my writing is indecipherable. Okay, so what I started doing was writing notes on student papers, student projects. Instead of handwriting that they were indecipherable, I started typing them. Okay, using Word, or I think I used Word, and I found that I was writing the same notes over and over again, semester after semester. Sometimes longer, sometimes shorter, depending on how much time I had. But it was the same notes. Essentially, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if I could somehow keep a library of those notes? So I worked with a developer at the Greenleaf School, and we actually created a desktop appliance just for Macs, and this was many operating systems ago, that we could drag and drop comments onto student work. And we called it Markup. Okay. Simultaneous with that going on, you guys were working on ThinkSpace, right? And I saw, and I met you folks and got involved. And ThinkSpace could do stuff that my system couldn't. And my system couldn't. There was no mechanism for handling the assignments themselves. Students would send in their assignments in PDF. I'd put their comments on it, then save it, send it back to them. And invariably, in a class of 30 students, 28 of them would name their file "my paper." Okay. And ThinkSpace handled the naming conventions and all that without me having to work on it, without me having to have a separate spreadsheet for scores and stuff like that. So that's the long story short. That's here we go from here. Okay. This is a screenshot of the ThinkSpace comment library. Oh, sorry. Yeah, ThinkSpace comment library. And as far as I know, it has almost an unlimited number of comments. The comments are organized in by tags. So for instance, I personally have a set of comments for each assignment in each course, and tagged for each assignment in each course. So I can just bring up the comments that are unique to that course. And then I also save comments. I've used it for writing courses. I've used it for found it to be wonderful when working with graduate students, because how many times are you gonna have to say, cite this, right? And ThinkSpace was a way I could add a little comment that says cite this. The ability of ThinkSpace to remember the comments really changes the time involvement, in that anytime I spent writing a handwriting comment on a paper, that time was lost. That investment was lost. Whereas because I'm depositing it into a library, or essentially a bank, I'm building this bank. So time I spend working on a comment is something that I get to reuse down the road. Sometimes in that same session of looking at papers, certainly in the next semester. So because the comments don't have to be just, you got this wrong, fix, circling wrong things. I tend to have 3 different kinds of comments. Corrections, which are the sort of typical thing that you would have at the very baseline. Comments that say, this is wrong, and here's a little clue on how, here's a clue on how to do it right. But then, because it's so fast, once you have the comments already written, to reuse them semester after semester, then I can also have comments that acknowledge when someone's doing something right, with more than just an attaboy, because that tends not to have much effect. But having a comment that says, well, here's the context why what you got right was right, and here's how you're going to use it, or here's how you need to think about it, or here's a way of thinking about it in a more sophisticated way, rather beyond, oh, you just got you got the answer right. Okay, so I call that amplifications. And then there's also, I give context notes too. Usually at the end of every assignment, I'll say, okay, got them all right. Here's what this means, because we're a pre-professional school. Here's what it means in the profession. Okay, so for instance, this is about 2 of the variables that get used in the media profession, advertising profession a lot, reach and frequency. But I get to comment, well, pay more attention to reach, because frequency is not something that's getting looked at as much anymore. Okay? Adds a level of sophistication. And what we find from our students who go out on internships is that gets really valued. Their ability to else the terminology in a real world kind of way boosts their portfolio up a little bit. Okay. What else I got here? Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay, just a couple screenshots on how I work with ThinkSpace. I typically have multiple phases for the same thing, and maybe I'll figure out as we refine them. And it might be just in this case, this is a very straightforward workbook assignment that, rather than having students hand in a paper, they enter their responses onto ThinkSpace, and it's called MFP. Is the workbook they use. And I called the publisher and asked permission to repro the pages, portions of the pages from ThinkSpace, and he was okay with it, as long as the students kept buying the book. So the important thing here is that you've got the responses, and then you've got the revisions. Okay, and this comes to something that I found was really important in saving time. Which was, okay, so here's an example of the initial phase, and the students type in their answers, okay? And then I can very quickly, using my little library, pull up responses. Now I have them do that at essentially this first go round, because then I want to use one more round and say, fix the stuff that you got wrong, and we'll all be good. And what I do is I spend my time looking at these initial rounds and invest my time in initial rounds, and then the final version is just a glance. Right.
Can I just kind of put some context for those of you that don't use this? So ThinkSpace is really designed to take a very complex problem and break it up into bite-sized pieces. So you could have your students either iterate on something like Jay is doing, or solve this little piece of a problem and then carry some of it forward and solve it over here and solve it over here and get feedback all along. And you can go in there, and if you can back up one more.
How do I back up? I would.
So you can go in there and, like I do this in PFF all the time, you can write questions for your students and they can respond in those gray boxes, right? And then now you see that the comments there on the side that Jay has put in there.
And if we could log in and you could show it how you do it, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, okay, good. Once we get through it, there's time. Okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I've got to get to a class after this. Does this make sense? You know, I'm more talking about something I see all the time.
Are you dragging them over? Or
It's actually,
the comments
the way it works is I just click. I have a library of comments at CEL, right here, and this isn't live. This is just a screenshot. But I literally just click it. You know, if I did that, and how do I go back? Okay. What's logged in? Yeah, you literally just click on the comment and it pops it over into a pane there. Go
So
ahead.
can you modify those comments that you'll make
Yes.
for each semester?
Yeah.
If
Oh,
different
absolutely.
dates,
Yeah.
things like that?
So I can, and then I believe, is it set up now? I know they were working on it where I could write a custom comment for a student and then save that.
Yes.
Right? That's set up.
Yes.
Save that. And tag that.
So those are the buttons. That's the save button, that's the edit, and that's the trash.
Okay. So the save
That
track.
takes it to the library immediately.
Okay. Good. Okay. Does that make sense? So this first panel here, the students see that. This is the library, and that's what I see. This is my hundreds and hundreds of comments. And because it uses a tag system, I'm only popping up a handful of comments, you know, the 15 or 20 comments that I might have for this one assignment.
So Jay actually has a library of 700 plus comments. And right now the comments are like, if I log in, I can't access this comment. I just have mine. So there's no point in me logging in. He should log in and show him yours.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
But they are working on something where we can transfer the library. So if he has a TA, or if you have TAs, and you want them to be doing that grading, they can access your library.
Let me talk, because you used the word grading. Okay, that's been another
Scoring.
Well, no, scoring, no. But sort of one of the things is getting to read about feedback. One of the least valuable things you can spend your time on is grading. The student, and we've all been, how many, we all have annual reviews, right? And the minute we hear a number, like, that's it. Everything else that's said, all the rest of that feedback only goes to relate to that number, to either justify it or fight against it. So the minute you put a grade on it, you're saying we're done here. And the students, how many times have you done end of semester, it's the end of the semester, you've marked up an entire paper and the student hasn't even picked it up. All that time is, that's time that you've wasted, that you've wasted. So what I've tried to do is spend my time doing having students do revisions, and spend my time looking at the early versions and doing a very quick glance at the end, and hiding the grades from students until after they're done. They never see grades until I'm good and ready to show that I've already thought that they've read their comments. Because if there's a number on it, they don't do it. I mean, I don't do it either. So why they should. So it's investing time early on rather than at the end, and I think that helps everybody. It takes a lot of pressurization out of the classroom, where you're saying, okay, try your best, give it your all, and if it doesn't work out, I'll give you another shot at it.
You're more like a coach.
It's more like a coach, right? Okay. I really don't have time to get into the whole philosophy there, but I'm just letting it say the highest paid educator on this campus is the football coach. And he does, and my gosh, he doesn't wait till the scores are in and then start talking to the players. He does it when they're practicing. And so Students seem to like it. Let's see, what else do I have here? Yeah, and this is the comment I actually use the most, which is, okay, I've identified some of the issues, fix them by such and such a time. Okay, and what I've actually started doing is telling the students that if you fix them, we're all good, full credit, and if you don't fix them, I'm going to actually make the assignment score next time. I'll give you 20% because and that's part of the pre-professional thing of, well, what's going to happen in the workplace if your supervisor identifies an issue you don't take care of. Okay, there are going to be you then create two problems. One is there's been a mistake made, so who cares? But then there's been a moment of disrespect, which is a big issue. Okay, so I really punish students for not going back in and doing the easy, not doing the easy fixes. Okay, let's see, what else I say? Okay, when I have done surveys on about ThinkSpace, this is compared to other classes. Feedback the instructor was this was slower to faster, and well, we get a lot, the highest score much faster. And how about for in depth again? More. Not every student likes it. Students are very well trained for the sort of feedback that they've been getting, the quantity of feedback and the quality of feedback, and some don't like getting extensive feedback. Some just want to have a score, get a score, and move on. And so I certainly understand that. I can't play to it, but I can understand. I can understand. That's a lot of stuff.
You have measured this?
Yeah, a couple times. Yeah. But remember, it's all within classes that I've done, and they know at some point that I'm really into this stuff. So it's not like an arm's length, arm's length survey. There's a lot of experimental bias in here, where I'm asking my students to tell me about what they think of my program. If that sounds like it might not be a valid measure, they're probably,
We could probably work with you to set that up so you could publish it.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get published. I just would. I'd like to see it, maybe used for more people.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you give a little bit of interpret that a little bit more?
This stuff here. Okay, so this was a 1 to 5 scale in an end of the semester survey, and this combines a couple different classes and I typically ask a lot of different questions about the different elements of the coursework, and these were the 2 ThinkSpace questions that to me related to what I was using ThinkSpace for. I wasn't asking them directly about ThinkSpace in these questions, and I was just asking about the feedback. I said, on a scale of 1 to 5, how does the feedback in this class compare to your other classes? Okay, and they said it was faster and more in depth than other classes, for the most part.
Do you see a difference in outcomes, like student learning? Does it like?
That would be great. Because there's not a control group. No, I don't have the ability to see what that might look like. Because ThinkSpace has such great ability to upload resources, I've been uploading old student work, past projects, sort of exemplars for students to look at. There's a lot of in the advertising and journalism PR programs, a lot of what the students do for their final project are these pretty elaborate looking plans that have images in it and spreadsheets and that sort of thing, and text and a lot of design and support. And so I've been uploading older work for students to look at as they develop their new stuff. And one, they really appreciate that. And because they're only seeing good stuff, I think it tends to raise the vote.
Do you find that they're less surprised at their grade? That was the thing that I had with one student. I kept saying, hey, get this, and then we got the grade. They didn't quite, you never did implement, and I think if I had had a little bit more.
Yeah, I maybe because I'm, I'll kill them, or, I don't know, they don't like talking to me about this. I have very few students come back and say, why'd you give me this grade? Because they've been getting lots and lots of feedback saying this isn't up to, I tend to be pretty direct, saying this might be a good start, but I'm just being nice by saying that. You have to put lots more time into it, and I'll identify the class of errors, there's spelling errors, things like that, or mathematical errors, so they'll see that sort of stuff. By the way, this is a side note here about looking at writing here. The research that I've read on writing says that it's not very useful to line edit for students to identify specific errors as much as it is to identify the type of error. Okay, go find somebody, talk about subject-verb agreement because yours are unstable and unacceptable. That's what, rather than saying this, circling specific errors and saying fix those. Students tend to fix those, but that's all they fix. They say errors.
They just do what you tell them to do and not think about
Right. Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
And the writing centers do that. I mean, they would agree with you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They don't like copying. They won't copy it essentially for students, and that's a huge time saver. To start thinking about what students pay attention to and what they don't is a time saver, because if they're not going to process the information you're giving them, why spend time doing it?
So are you going to show us something live here?
Well, I can. I'm
Yes.
terrified of it. But
Do we have any questions from Bill, Laura?
if you can just pull ThinkSpace, I can
Yeah.
see what I can do. What do you want?
Not a question, but Jay, I greatly, a long time ago, before the current version of ThinkSpace, I heard you talk about what you were doing, and listening to you right now is excellent for me, because I teach at the undergrad level and at the graduate level, the latter is in an online master's degree program. I teach two issues classes that are writing and discussion intensive, and I tend to get slammed on my course evaluations because I'm as the semester goes on, I'm slow at getting feedback to students, but I was research only for a long time, so I'm newer to teaching. And one of the things that I did was I was treating their papers as though I was co-authoring them. It would kill me for grading. I'd start getting way behind and I'd do tons of line editing. And then they'd come back and the next damn essay had the same types of problems. So thank you.
One of the things, Laura, that I've started doing that the students love is to use, it's not even through ThinkSpace, to be honest, but it's as soon as something hits a deadline to pull up a random selection of the papers and provide feedback to that random selection, then copy that feedback and give that same feedback to everyone, saying, here's some of the things I'm seeing. And to see them as a student, because it's funny the way you even said it was students say I don't get feedback fast enough. Well, maybe you need to give feedback to students, plural.
Yeah, and I in Blackboard I have what I call the community message board, where that is a forum, discussion forum where you're totally right. I could do some global comments there, and I've also just revised some of my lessons to have more peer evaluation steps in their term project development, because I allow the grad students to do baby steps throughout the semester. But another thing is, you are totally right. I finally learned in a Word document I keep for myself, I started pasting the common comments that I use over time in those homework assignments. So I'm sort of in a minor way, I'm hipping up to the method that you've done in a sophisticated
Well,
manner.
one of the nice things about teaching big classes here is you start to see big student psychology. And I don't think there is such a thing anymore as a student. They seem to go in packs now. They're little cells of pods of students. So maybe we shouldn't worry too much about treating them dealing with each and every one as an individual.
I had an idea.
That's common.
Yeah. I know it could be taken the wrong way because they pay individually.
I just had an idea based on what you just said, Jay. I mean, some people might even think about like bringing up a paper in class and think, how would you correct this?
Yeah.
And have them tell you, so it could
That's
be
a great
sort of
idea.
an interactive thing rather than you just saying it.
Yeah. I mean, they're tough for audit sometimes. And I just sent you my ThinkSpace password because it's a long string.
Okay.
And
You can log in yourself. I just
can't log
wanted to
in.
kind
I can't send you.
of show them what we are talking about in a very little context, and then you can show them like this. So, for example, this is a space in ThinkSpace. So this is your course, and it has all your different assignments. What enables the kind of comments that Jay does, and what he's talking about, this overload of 100 students sending you 100 files saying my paper, okay, or my assignment 1, and then you having to download it and all that, and then finding it, making a folder. All that is ruled out by a phase we have in ThinkSpace called file upload, and which is basically just a place here where students can upload a file. So this is what it looks like. You can put in your instructions here. It's good if it's a PDF file because that's what opens up in ThinkSpace. So this is where it is. You select a file, and I don't know if there are any PDFs here. Oh, I doubt it. All right. So okay, supposing for example, I'm just going to choose one, but it's not okay, and it's uploaded. Okay, so you don't have to download anything. All right, you can download it.
Can we
from
back
here.
up to you sign up your students in here, so they're all in a roster, so they all get their view of it, and then you can then each one of them is uploading
Right.
their stuff.
Each student will have this. So for instance, this is a file which a student has uploaded. And now you need to start working on it. And if you click it, it opens up right here as a PDF. So you have nothing, you don't have to download nothing. It just works here.
You can just click on comments because
Right, and then you click on comments here. And now you want to tell them to change something here. You click it here, and there's a new comment that opens up. Okay, you say change this for so and so. Okay, and you can save the comment, and then you can put it in the library, add to library. You can edit it, you can delete it. Okay, so if I yeah, so the students when they go in, when the student goes in, you'll see that this is what they'll see when they open it. They'll see the 1 and 2, and it's like in context, right?
Grab one from the library now, instead of writing one.
Well, I don't have as good a library as Jay does.
yeah, that's okay.
So you
But I have
Oh,
this
there we go.
library.
Yeah, there we
Okay.
go.
So do one.
Yeah, show them how that. Just show them how it
So-
goes. Do you have to click it? Do you drag it? How do you pull it? How do you get the comment?
Jay, you are the expert in that. That's what we need to show how that's done. Okay, open library.
Open library, and then don't you just click it?
You click there first, then you click over in the
I
PDF.
click there
There it is.
first, and I click here on the PDF, and it's
Okay.
done.
All right.
And you can manage your library here, and now Jay is going to show you. You can manage your library
no,
here.
because here's the cool part. Here, can I go? Show you?
Yeah, I'm searching for tags, right? That you said you had them organized by tags.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you do that then?
Oh.
You type in a tag word.
Right. So here I'll
How
show.
about you sign in?
No, that's the whole thing. I just told my password is this long. I email it to you. So let's stick with yours, honestly.
But
So-
we We can't see your library.
It's okay.
Your wonderful library.
It's okay. It's not that wonderful. It's just big. And if anyone wants that, you know, I can say stuff to it. But
I can log in.
So when I have done this in a different way than I've used
so yeah, you
the same
get back to that.
commenting thing, where the students, I have them in teams and they comment on each other. And so there's a whole lot of vetting of their job materials before I get to it. And then they first do it in teams, then I send them to the writing center, and then the writing center comments on it, and then I send them to their mentor, and their mentor comments on it. By the time I get to see it, they're beautiful. So I don't have to do all this horrible, iterations of it.
Is all that captured in ThinkSpace?
It's all mediated through there. You can put them in the teams in ThinkSpace. It's quite wonderful. I mean, we've developed this very intentionally to be able to support this.
I'm sorry. Do they sit down with their mentor with ThinkSpace open?
They can.
Oh, okay.
I've never done that.
Well, I mean, we could do it that way. We do it very intentionally that way in the classroom and with the writing center. We didn't want to burden the mentors with having to do it that way, but it could be done.
Okay, so this is the library here. Okay, we're sort of the comment manager, and so they're the tags, and I'm not even sure. See, if I want to add a tag, do I hit edit?
Yeah. Add category.
Add category. So if I want to do that, so like I said, just added grammatical. And now it's every time I just go looking for grammatical errors. There we go. Okay. That is, I mean, what you hit on was one of the real difficult, one of the challenges of ThinkSpace. I call it the Netflix challenge, because when you have hundreds and hundreds of comments, just like hundreds and hundreds of movies, how do you pull up the ones that you need? And the tag seems to be a start with that, because on a vertical screen, there's probably only room for 16 or 18, tags, or 16 or 18 comments. And most that they're short, and they do truncate down, even when they're saying,
Jay, do you is it common for your tagging to be within, say, assignment 2.1, in my case, in lesson 1, so the essay that
exactly, yeah,
you tie it to a class or a homework
I'll tie
assignment?
it to a class or a project name. Okay, so final project media planning or something like that, and might call it that, and then might have some other subgroups within that.
Okay.
Some multiple tags, yeah. But you end up with a pretty good library, and ThinkSpace got slow on how to deal with that this year, and they've rebuilt the capability, it looks like, to add tags in and so on. It's a very powerful tool.
What I love is, Jay developed this, and then I've been able to use it. Janet Johnson, there's this, personal statement in order to get into a dietetic internship that's really high stakes, and the students get terribly blocked on it, kind of like writing a teaching philosophy, only, it's just really difficult for the students. And so we did a similar thing that we developed in PFF on ThinkSpace with her teams and students. And boy, their comments, the students are really loving. So, and she's seeing better results. It makes the students feel very supported. And in PFF, we're doing a formal research project. But the student, the results are much better, way much better than when I first started out. And the students are feeling very supported. And I don't get complaints about writing anymore, where I used to get a lot of complaints about writing. Very fun.
It really is. It's been one of the fun things about doing these projects. I mean, hearing about other educational ideas and so on. Some you might bring on, and some you just listen to, and it all helps bring up the teaching. There's just not a lot of ways to interchange on this stuff.
I like to think about this like a toolbox or a Swiss Army knife or something, and you use the ones that are appropriate for your educational. There's a lot of them that you can use. I like the teams and the writing and the diagnostics part. Others use different pieces.
Give me one more second. Let's get this.
Okay, yeah, you have to head over to. I have to teach a class now.
When does your class start?
I can be there at 3:30 for the prep meeting. It's another class.
That's
No,
well, we'll try one
We'll
last
try,
time,
yeah.
and then it's
oh, good. Okay,
there you go.
there we go. Okay, so by the way, it's Pete, as long as you're online here, or do we
Yeah.
lose? Is there a way of getting rid of spaces? Because I have a lot of
Yeah.
old courses that I don't need anymore.
Tell James to delete it.
Okay, good. All right, easy enough.
Another way to do it quicker is just to put an asterisk before the ones that you
Oh, okay.
want to come to the top.
Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, it's not something, it's just a housekeeping thing.
So let's see your stuff.
Okay, so this, what do you guys want to say? Okay, so, where's fall 2016, so this is the last semester completed. And the media flight plan stuff you've already seen. The other part that we do are these little case studies, okay? And this is a class of 30 students. And we go into grading.
Yeah, so that's how you access your students. There's a grade book, and then your students come in a drop-down list, and you can access each one of them one after the other.
Kadjo, could you share screen?
Oh, it's not shared? That's strange. When did the screen sharing stop? Oh God, sorry.
It wasn't that long ago, Kajal.
All right, thank you. Thank you
It's
for
not, wait, it's not being shared right now.
Glitches galore. Okay?
Yes.
Good.
Okay,
Oops, sorry.
that's okay. No, it's students gone. Okay, so this would be an example of an assignment where they had to do a pretty complex piece, and this would be the first round. You see, they already have stuff in it, so PDF is pretty much the only format that could handle that. And then the students was given, this whole comment list. I don't know what happened to the comments.
Super solid work, Katie. The next step is doing.
Yeah, okay. Oh, so this one I actually wrote really long comments individually for this stuff. Let's see if I go like this. Okay. So yeah, I wrote extensive comments. So really, I did the same sort of thing that you could have done on Google Doc here, the longer comments, and then I can then look and go to the next phase, the final phase. And I don't even call them drafts anymore because they don't understand. If I use the word draft, they immediately translate that to what's the least I can do. And so I can pull up the final. And so this is the final version with graphics and notes and stuff like that.
And now you grade it, right?
And then I publish a grade. There's actually a grade that I put for each one of these, for each of these phases. Show you that. There's a scorecard, and I see, and the students do not. and I have that on each of the phases. And so, for instance, this phase was worth 60 points.
So is there a rubric that you, like in Blackboard, that you can click radio buttons or something like that, or where does that score come from?
See, that's a good question. I don't use rubrics. I use checklists, and I give them in the briefing phase. I give them a checklist, and so I do it kind of the aviation, the airplane way, which is I won't tell you how to do. I'll tell you what needs to be done, and how well you do it is up to you. You know, how well you do it is up to you. But I'm not going to say, well, it's okay to be, you know, to be inferior on any one thing, and it's okay to miss anything. Okay, so I give them a checklist and say you have to do everything in this checklist.
But how do you come up with that 60 in an efficient way? Or how are you getting 60?
That's a great question. I'm looking at it and saying how well did they work against the checklist, against the expectations, and against the comments that they got.
You have a checklist over here on your computer?
No, I just have it on a piece of paper.
Okay.
I mean, I published it, but yes.
So this is manually fed in. If you're saying
Yes, it's
that it
manual.
automatically graded, no. He feeds it in manually.
Just types it in.
He just
Yeah.
types it in and saves it.
You know, what I've developed is some rubrics on Blackboard, so I can say, you know, for each thing, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom, boom. You're not doing that. You're just
No, not doing that. Yeah. And the reason why I found that students start to worship the rubric, you know, it's like they had an airplane, they worship the checklist, but forget where they're flying to. They fly on the side of the mountain, because flying on the side of the mountain is not on the checklist, you know. So I've tended to stay away from them. It's just personal crap for me.
You get any pushback on that?
No, because they're getting feedback in a professional setting, in a more professional setting, saying, well, here are the issues. Here's the checklist. Here are prior projects. So they're seeing, you know, they're kind of seeing what the level is. They're seeing what the expectations are. They're getting feedback, and the most important thing, they're getting the opportunity to respond to all of that before they get break.
Formative rather than just summative.
Right. It's doing the least you can do with summative, and the most you have time to do with formative.
It sounds as if though that the students get a feeling that I'm expected to really do my best work.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sounds like
Because, you know, I mean, a smart student would look and say, you know, I only needed 80 in this. Right? You know, but if you leave it undefined, oh man, you know, this project could go badly, and they might do a little bit more.
So do you?
But I have no data to say that. I worked harder than I would have expected to.
So this sounds like you are emulating a real situation, like
The coach, yeah, the football coach.
But in a work safe
Yeah.
place, this would be kind of an
That's a good way to say
authentic
it.
way of doing it, right?
Exactly. You know, where there aren't where there aren't strong or very well articulated specifications. You know, do the best you can, do it, get it done, and then fix it. So like programming, I guess.
But like in journalism, do you have somebody that looks at your stuff and says, you better fix this right now?
Oh yeah.
So
Well, there should be, you know, if we're lucky, there's an editor.
Yeah.
You know, who does exactly that. I will say, in terms of the students working out, the feedback that I got from industry, because we'll send stuff to people in the industry, is very, very high. And say, you know, well, your students are working at a level of what we would expect second or third year professional to be doing, because they have to explain stuff. They can't work to grades, things like that. And that's what that's class of 36. So that it's been good.
Could you quickly show us your library?
You were just dying to see
I
that.
want to show that 700. I just can't believe that many comments here.
All right, okay. And your students start the class understanding that's how you're going to approach things.
Of course
They
not.
know the previous classes, or does
No,
it take a while to get used to it?
No, it takes a while to get used to it. But for instance, I actually sit there in class and we'll go through some of the project, and they'll have computers and work in class. We'll see how it goes. When it gets down to the student end of things, this is not a whole lot different than Google Docs, which they're very, very familiar with.
Does it conflict with and that's a good question, because it seems like it's really good, but how do they mesh with Blackboard then? Does it like, okay, I got ThinkSpace, Blackboard.
Yeah. Well, I have a link from Blackboard to ThinkSpace, but then they have to relog. They do have to relog in. It's a lot. Yeah. It's and we use a few other programs. We use CATME, which is out of Purdue, I believe, and that's for a team building program and a team of peer evaluation program where they're evaluating each other's performance. And that's a whole other log. I think
maybe more to the CELT folks here, the understanding, or at least what we're hearing is Blackboard may not be a problem for a while, in the future. Is that something that we could talk about? Better integration between
Absolutely. We did, Anne Marie, our director, did a series of faculty interviews to figure out what we're going to do for the next LMS. And boy, that came out extremely strongly, not just ThinkSpace, but there's things in math and all these third parties, and everybody's like, we have to have something to integrate these. So, some of the other LMSs are better at being able to integrate, and so that's really, I think that's coming out strong as a requirement.
Here's a team, so there wasn't an agreement about
and Pete can speak much more intelligently to that than I can, because he was the guy that supported Blackboard for years here until he retired. Pete, do you have anything you want to say about LMS integration?
Well, there is a standard. We had it in ThinkSpace 1 that we adopted for logging into Blackboard and then going to ThinkSpace directly. In that particular case, because I controlled both Blackboard and ThinkSpace, I could send grades back. The standard doesn't work that well for other LMSs in terms of getting grades back. However, some LMSs do provide some functions for doing that. And I think that's mostly what you all would really like, is to have them work in ThinkSpace and the grades end up in the Blackboard gradebook.
Okay, so I do need to go, but this is,
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah, you're right. I didn't realize it was that many, so 700 some comments.
Wow.
And
If you can minimize.
why would I minimize Pete?
And put him on the side.
Yeah. And one of the things I've done though on my comments that I don't know. Well, it was summary. I have thought about color coding comments, and my thinking is that if I color code too much, people will only learn that red means something I have to attend to, or bad news, I'll only read that. I won't read the other stuff. So I really limited the color coding to maybe the summary. What I've had to do too is I use the tags personally to say, okay, I want these comments to pop up, or I want to have these comments available when I'm looking at this assignment, and then I'll even number the comments against the particular questions or something like that. So in other words, we'll say Q7, MFP assignment number 7, question 7, you're right, things like that. Just because when you're talking about 20 or 30 comments, you want them, you want to have fast access to them. Okay, that makes sense. And Newell JJ is my email, so shoot me an email if I working through stuff.
Yeah, no, this was really useful, especially where feedback is concerned. Like, I don't remember ever getting formative feedback, ever, except when I was doing my PhD and I was submitting chapters. And the load of difference that made in my writing, and how smooth it flowed, and how much sense it made.
Well, there's a book about about educational interventions, and it looked at meta-analyses. It was actually a meta-analysis of meta-analyses. I'm not quite sure how you do that part, but it tried to rank different educational interventions you could have on outcomes.
Talking about John Hattie's book?
Yes.
Yeah.
So things like experience of the teacher, things like class size, things like that. And at the top of the list in terms of effectiveness is formative feedback. It just shows up as one of the 5 or 6 best things you can be doing. So it sort of behooves us to do as much of that as we can. Or with peer evaluation, that's a way to get formative feedback even faster.
Certainly, I have a blast with that on my master's level professor wrote something on my paper one time. He wrote the words very formative, very interesting, and I really feel impressed. Godly group. So why do I remember that now?
Yeah.
I remember the pain of the gobbledygook.
Yeah.
As opposed to how I could be less gobbly. I don't
Yeah.
Well, and that just reminded me of the one comment which would be across papers in India, like school, in pen and red, you can do better. Where? Show me where can I do better? What do I need to change? Can do better. That was it, and then 13 out of 20 or whatever. That will score. Where can I change?
And then I made a comment, and it was really my own, and he said, "Science. This is my own, literally." I know, literally. So that obviously was brilliant. So the juxtaposed against the gobbledygook earlier, I can pick things like inconsistent. I probably put certain.
Well, you probably weren't on the program to understand that when you're not supposed to have your own ideas.
Or you could put down Denise, personal communication.
Well, I do apologize, but I don't know.
No, thank you so much, Jay.
It was fun. Bye, guys.
We got to get some professionals.
Well, try to come back to these.
Yeah, enough treacherous on the ice there.
Okay, thank you. Travel well.
I thought, oh, it's going to be nice in Iowa.
Saturday, your forecast was 30 yesterday. It's nice. All supposed to be.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Jim. All right, so do we have any questions or something you would like to explore?